Okay, thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm your host, Jenny Bowles. I'm the Construction Category Manager at Scotland Excel, and I'm really pleased to welcome you all to this webinar, which is Building Scotland's Future Now. Before we launch into everything, just want to give you a couple of housekeeping points. So for your awareness, this event is being recorded. We're hoping that technology all working as it's supposed to be able to do so, we'll be able to download this after the event and make this available on a platform for anyone that kind of wants to go back and maybe hear about, rehear some elements that maybe you've missed throughout the session. If you are not speaking, can you please turn off your camera and off your microphone? That'll hopefully help everyone else's bandwidth, and we'll try and avoid any juttering of the webinar. We are going to encourage you to try and be a bit interactive. Please do ask questions. After each speaker, we're going to allow an opportunity for you to ask any questions that you have. In order to do this, up on the right-hand side of your screen, there should be a little hand, and you can press that to raise your hand. That indicates that maybe you want to ask a question, or maybe you just want to make an observation or add something to the discussion. You can press that. There's also a chat function, which you can access. Again, it should be up on the right-hand side of your screen, a little speech bubble. And I would encourage everyone just to press that now, because that means that you're able to see the chat down the right-hand side of your screen. And you can use that to type down any questions that you have along the way. Because it might be that right at the start, something pops into your head and you think that you're not going to remember that in 10 minutes time. Stick it onto there. And my colleague, Sarah Clare, is going to be managing the chat and the raise hand functions. So at the end of each speaker, we can invite you to ask any questions. And when it is your turn, please do remember to turn on your microphone and your camera when you're going to go ask your questions. I've already managed today to forget to turn on my microphone. So at some point, we'll have to yell the immortal words, "You're on mute." And finally, we will be tweeting during the event. So feel free to follow us on our LinkedIn and our Twitter handles, and I've put those on the screen right now in front of you. So I'll just pause for a moment just to make sure if there's anyone that's having any real issues kind of hearing me or anything, now's probably your time to speak up. And assuming that I've not heard anyone say otherwise, so we're just going to continue on. So this morning's session is part of Scotland Excel's Supporting Scotland's Recovery campaign. And the aim of our campaign is really just to try and find ways in which we can work with the public and the private sector to help aid Scotland's economic and social recovery post-COVID-19. And I'll just touch wood when I say post-COVID-19, because if you're like me with young kids, it's quite hard sometimes to really imagine what life is like post-COVID-19. But for this particular webinar, we have partnered with the Scottish Federation of Housing Associations and Construction Scotland Innovation Centre to talk about the future of social housing. So what we're going to do is, first up, we're going to have Stacey Dingwall, who is the Senior Policy Manager at the SFHA, and she's going to talk about what is needed beyond 2021 and the importance of delivering affordable homes and the impact that that has on our social and economic recovery. In the middle, I'm going to do a short update on Scotland Excel's Affordable Homes Framework, and then we'll finish off with Sarah Buchanan, who's the Business Relationship Manager from Construction Innovation Scotland, who will talk about the innovative ways that they are helping to ensure that our economic and social recovery is low carbon and sustainable. So without further ado, I think we'll just get going, and I'm going to invite Stacey at this point to turn on her camera, turn on her microphone, and also just share her screen, and I will stop.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Hopefully this works. This is always the fun bit, isn't it?
Excellent, I can see your screen.
Perfect. God, that didn't take as long as I thought it was going to take. So perfect. So thank you very much, Jennifer, and Scotland Excel for inviting me to take part in your webinar today. Really pleased to be here, and also thank you to everyone who's joined us for the webinar this morning. As Jennifer said, I'm going to talk a bit about SFHA's priorities as we go into the all things going well, the 2021 parliamentary elections in May, but also as we start to actually hopefully soon actually move into the recovery phase from COVID-19. So what I'm going to do is just talk about a few of the key priorities that SFHA see as being crucial to supporting us into the phase beyond this year. So for those of you who don't know, SFHA, the Scottish Federation of Housing Associations, we are the national membership body for housing associations, cooperatives and social businesses that provide affordable and social housing in Scotland. Some of the key things that we focus on day to day, we work closely with government and others in the sector to achieve legislation, regulation and funding. So really the environment circumstances that our members need to be resilient and independent social businesses in Scotland. As well as policy focus, we also have a team which works closely with partners, including Scotland Excel and CSIC, in order to support our members to develop and deliver modern and innovative services so that they can achieve the ambitions that they set out in their business plans. I suppose really a key thing that we do is, I suppose we all know that kind of working in partnership is always better. So a really key part of what we do is facilitate the connection between our members who, you know, spread from Shetland right down to the borders. So we just really facilitate a lot of that partnership working. To give you a bit of an idea of the numbers that we work with at SFHA at the moment, so we currently represent 140 of the 154 housing associations and co-ops in Scotland, which is pretty much almost there in terms of coverage across the country. We have a really engaged and active membership, and probably none more so than the last year. I suppose like all of you who've attended a lot more of these types of webinars and meetings over the last year, obviously virtually, and that's really been, I suppose, a key thing for our members who might not have been able to attend as many of our events, you know, just due to their location, their geographical circumstances. So over the last year, we've seen a lot more people be able to participate in that, and we've also kind of facilitated, you know, obviously using Teams. So that's been a really key source of support for our members during this time, to draw on peer support and find out what others are doing, what they can learn from during this time to support tenants. The Scotland Housing Association sector overall, so this kind of gives you an idea of the scale and breadth of the sector that we're talking about today. So about 1.2 million people currently live in social housing, which is obviously about 20% of our total population. The sector itself employs more than 14,000 people across Scotland. And in terms of investment, the current affordable housing supply programme was 3.2 billion in state funding, and the current through that current programme, RSLs have actually managed to double the investment that's made in that programme to around 7 billion through accessing private investment. And I suppose a really key fact about, you know, the importance of continuing house building in the country is that it creates an estimated 4.1 jobs full-time equivalent for every house that's built, which is obviously a really important fact at the best of times, but especially the situation that we see ourselves in now, I think it's really crucial that we continue to make this investment in house building. So if you've seen anything that SFHA have put out in the last couple of years, it's probably been connected to a big bit of research that we did in partnership with Shelter Scotland and CIH Scotland. We published the research finally in June this year after a slight delay due to COVID, and that research was a repeat of an earlier bit of research that we did in 2015, again with Shelter and CIH, which found that looked at the evidence of housing need in Scotland, and at that time the research went on to inform the 50,000 targets, the 50,000 homes target that we've been working towards in the last 5 years, and obviously we were on track to meet that target, but due to COVID, obviously, there's going to be a bit of shortfall, but our members and others have been working very hard in order to get as close to meeting that target as we can this year. We decided to repeat the research, obviously knowing that we were coming to the end of this programme this year, to look at what the continuing need for affordable and social housing in the country would be post 2021, with the same research team, and they have calculated that in order to meet the backlog of housing needs in Scotland, we still need another 53,000 affordable homes to be built, and that includes 37,100 homes for social rent. It's estimated, if we go by the current grant rate, which I'll get into a bit later, that this would require an investment of 3.4 billion on the part of the Scottish Government over the 5 years in order to deliver the homes that everyone needs in Scotland. Aside from new build, another key focus for our members, and I know other kind of key partners that are here today, is it's not just, we recognise that it's not just about new build, we also have to do a significant amount of work in our existing stock, and for that reason we're calling on the government to commit to a large-scale multi-year retrofit programme in order to bring our building stock up to the standards required to meet Scottish Government targets, around energy efficiency, climate change. Our members have already done a lot of work in this area. They've learned a lot of lessons that can be transferable to other tenures, so it makes sense that the government should support them in order to continue generating this evidence that we can then draw on, and as other sectors move to working towards similar targets to our own. As well as actual investment in the actual bricks and mortars of our building, what we're also calling on is a clearer definition of the affordability of these houses, which is based on household income. That's a really key one for us, because in the social sector, when you pay your rent, you don't just get the house. There's a whole load of other services that come alongside that, from housing associations, whether it's providing support with fuel bills to get back into jobs. There's a whole host of different services that our members provide to their tenants. So what we're really just trying to do is shift the focus to more of a whole house approach, where it's not just about the rent. You need to take that into account when you talk about the affordability of a house. Especially when you compare that to the private rented sector, and I suppose all the kind of different support and additional services that our members provide has never been more clearer in the last year. There's just so many examples. We could talk about that all morning, I think, of just the different ways that our members have supported their tenants in the last year, whether it's those who were shielding or isolating, whether it's people who needed help getting access to fuel and food. I think it's just never been more clear the additional support that our members are able to provide to their tenants. A couple of other things that we are really keen to see from the government, and these are things that we know they are working on with commitment through Programme for Government or different things. We're also calling for a national strategy for innovation with additional funding, which will support the growth of off-site construction and modular design in order to future-proof homes and address our climate emergency. Again, especially in the last years, kind of things like off-site construction and modern methods of construction is something that we've talked about for a long time, and I know CSIC have done a lot of work in this area as well, but I think the situation that we find ourselves now just really is giving us that push to kind of move towards taking into account different things like physical distancing that we're probably going to be living with for quite a while. Now is really the ideal time to move on with these kinds of things, in order to make sure that we are able to still delivering the amount of homes that we need through construction. Again, it kind of go back to the types of homes that we need. While we can focus on a number and say there's a number of houses that we need, we very much recognise that it's about having homes that meet people's needs. Having homes that are in the right places, connected to kind of local amenities and services. But I think we all know we've become very acquainted with our homes in the last year, and we know that those of us that are lucky to live in adequate housing have obviously experienced this pandemic differently to those who aren't that fortunate. So I think what we really need to focus on is recognising that while we may start to go back to some form of normality soon, I think all signs show that we are going to still be spending a lot more time in our homes. So we need to really make sure that people are living in the homes that really cater for their needs throughout their lives. So that's why we're asking that the government urgently looks at carrying out a review of housing for varying needs, which will enable the types of houses that people need. So we're starting that work now. We're not building houses that will need to be adapted, retrofitted in the near future. We really need to make that investment now and make sure that we're investing in the homes that are going to stick with us and support people to live in them throughout their lives. A key thing that we are also asking the government to do is take stock of the impact of all these different things that we're asking in the delivery of house building and also of housing associations at the moment. I've kind of covered a lot of things that we're asking for and we support the government to be delivering, but I suppose we all recognise that these types of things, they come with additional costs, and it's just really important that we don't pass these costs on to kind of the end user, the tenant basically. There's that comes a point where housing associations can only absorb so much of the investment that's required to meet these targets set out by the government. So we really need to kind of take stock and make sure that we aren't risking passing these costs on to tenants. So we're doing a bit of work in this area at the moment in order to kind of gauge the additional investment that our sector will be required to make to meet these targets, in order to be able to have that conversation with government to provide them with the evidence of the additional levels of investment support that our members will need in order to deliver on these targets. And I suppose that brings me to the current priority for SFHA as we go into the election and also kind of move into the recovery phase. We urgently need the Scottish Government to review the current level of grant subsidy which they provide within the current Affordable Housing Supply Programme, and make sure that the next subsidy level that they set for the next programme is actually going to enable us to deliver the amount of homes that we need. We've identified that there's 53,000 affordable homes that are needed, but as I've kind of discussed, these homes are going to be different to the ones that we've been developing up until now, and all signs are that it's going to cost more to develop these homes, which we absolutely have to be building to reflect challenges that we have around the climate and providing more energy efficient homes, providing homes that meet people's needs, but we have to make sure that the money that's allocated to the Affordable Housing Supply Programme is actually going to be able to deliver the amount of homes that we need. So in order to do that, obviously we need to review how much it does cost to build each of these homes, and as a result of that then we will need an increased subsidy level in order that our members and developers are able to deliver these homes for the country. So I suppose, why are these things so important? Thankfully, it's not just SFHA that thinks that these things are important. There's been a lot of support for our research across the sector, and there's been a lot of support for it in government as well. I've just highlighted three kind of key reports that have come out in recent times. So the advisory group on economic recovery was released, I think, last summer. So that was the review led by Benny Higgins, which looked at making recommendations for the economic recovery from COVID in Scotland. And one of the quotes from the report there was that investment in housing has an important part to play in supporting Scotland's recovery and supporting jobs, creating confidence and contributing to both social policy and climate change goals, which I think pretty much sums up the importance of why we need to keep investing in housing. You may have seen recently the Social Renewal Advisory Board released their report, If Not Now, When, which our Chief Executive, Sally Thomas, played a big part in. And that, you can probably tell from the title, it looks more at the social recovery from COVID that we need to have in Scotland. And, again, they've said everyone should have access to an affordable home that meets their needs. And our vision is that the housing system provides the right home for the right person and the right place at the right time. and Housing to 2040, which was the key priority before the pandemic hit. This will be the government's 20-year housing strategy that will really set out the roadmap as to how we're going to deliver all these things, and hopefully by the time we get to 2040 everyone will have the right home in the right place at the right time. The roadmap strategy has been delayed due to the obvious, but we do hope to see that sometime this spring. It's just going to be a really key document for the sector, in terms of how we actually work together to achieve the kind of goals that we are setting out in different reports. So we very much are looking forward to seeing that report before the election. So I suppose kind of just as I get to the end, I think it's just a good time to take a stock take of where we are now. A lot of the kind of asks that I've outlined are things that we have been pushing the government on for quite a long time now, especially with the research and various other activities that we've been undertaking in the last couple of years. So thankfully, the signs are looking quite good at the moment. Towards the end of last year, the government published its draft infrastructure investment plan, which they'll be bringing forward the non-draft version next week, I believe. And this allocates 2.8 billion in capital funding for affordable housing over the next 5 years. So you recall that we asked for 3.4 billion in order to deliver the homes that we've identified as being needed. It's a bit short of what we're asking for at the moment, but the government has indicated that this is actually a 16% increase on the current programme, and this is just very much the starting point with other ways to leverage in money into the programme, whether through local government finance or also financial transactions money which is received from Westminster. So while it falls a bit short at the moment, we certainly do see it as a very good starting point, especially when you consider all the challenges that the government faces at the moment in terms of investment. So we are quite pleased with that just now. Also last week saw the publication of the Scottish Government's draft budget, which for the next year included capital grant funding of 667.6 million for affordable housing in 21-22. This includes about 575 million for the affordable housing supply programme itself, and 92 million will come through local government. And alongside this, the government will utilise 142 million of financial transactions as well. Depending on the way you look at it, this looks, if you look at it on paper, this kind of looks as though it is a reduction on the budget that was allocated to the programme last year. However, it's important to note that last year was kind of the end of a 5-year programme that was ramping up towards the 50,000 targets. So that's why we're kind of seeing it on paper as though it is a bit of reduction. We have cautiously welcomed SFHA this funding announcement on the basis that if the government continues this level of investment over the next 5 years, this will deliver the amount of money that we're asking for to be allocated to affordable housing over the next Parliament. So we just really hope that the government does maintain this level of investment, and that's certainly something that we will be pushing them on as the years continue. But to get back to that, their key priority at the moment, the government are just about to set up a working group which will look at the subsidy level and the review that we need to take, and it's really fundamental to the next programme. With cost of construction rising, the different kind of standards and regulations that I've touched on here, not to mention Brexit, all of these means that costs are only going to rise. So we really need to make sure that the money that the government allocates to affordable housing is actually able to deliver the amount of homes that Scotland needs. So just in conclusion, to summarise what I've gone through today, just really, if we are to have a chance at a social and economic recovery from this nightmare for all of us, the key things that we feel that we need to see are sustained investment in affordable housing. As you probably guessed, or kind of taken from what I've said, a lot of our work means having the same conversations with government every year, pushing them for investment, and we, our members, sometimes don't know what that number is going to be every year. I know it's difficult with the kind of fixed term parliament that we have, but with something like housing, and especially when they're bringing forward a 20-year housing strategy, this really needs to be something that we can be confident that there's going to be a long-term investment in. That means no cliff edges for developers, for housing association every year when you don't know if things are going to continue the way they are. if we're going to have a long-term strategy, we need to match the investment with that as well. And most importantly, we need to make sure that our priority is making sure that our members are recognised for the lead and role that they take on things like design, energy efficiency standards, things like the the private rented sector. The regulations for them in energy efficiency have been delayed a couple of times, but our members are going straight in from EIS 1 to EIS 2, which is going to require a really significant amount of investment. So we just really need to make sure that our members are being recognised for the lead and role that they're taking on this, and as I've mentioned a couple of times, are adequately supported by the subsidy rates and investment which will allow them to deliver the type of housing that the government has set out in so many of its visions. And we're just really hoping to see less kind of visions and strategies now that we've got quite a few of those, and actually moving on to action to deliver the homes that we need in Scotland. Thank you, everyone.
Right, thank you very much, Stacey. That was really interesting. The other week I was reading an article that was talking about how for every new home that's built in Scotland, it supports 4 jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought I was, pretty interesting, because it means that not only the key work that you guys are doing is going to help the people that live in the houses, but it's actually essential to the people who are also going to build those homes. And sometimes it's easy to forget that the work that SFHA really does reach beyond those that are directly engaging with the housing associations or the tenants that kind of benefit from that. So it's great to hear about all the work that you guys are doing. So what I'm going to just do now is I'm going to open it up and see if anyone has any questions that they would like to ask Stacey. Either just raise your hand now and we can ask those, or feel free to use the chat box and you can kind of type any questions that you have. Everyone,
always the fun bit. I think what you said though, Jennifer, is really true. It's not just about that. It's, obviously I'm going to say that, but in terms of the economic and social benefits, it pretty much is a bit of a no-brainer, especially at the moment. It's something that can deliver quickly on a lot of fronts. So
I've got a question here, which is, do the SFHA have any plans to publish some of their success stories about the great work housing associations have done in supporting their tenants over the last year?
Yeah, it's actually something that we do on quite a regular basis. If you're not signed up to the weekly newsletter that we send out every Thursday, Housing Scotland Weekly, that every week that features a few case studies of the great things that our members have been doing. We did it before the pandemic, but especially now, there's just lots of stories. But yeah, we're always looking to share good news stories of the way our members have helped. We did publish a report last year which looked at the economic, social and environmental value that's generated by RSLs in Scotland. So there's also a lot of really good case studies in that report as well.
Anyone else have any questions? I'm going to ask one, which is, you mentioned, obviously you've talked about a number of those key asks, and it sounds like a few of them, after many of years of working on them, looks like we might actually get to the stage that there'll be some delivery there. Are there any of them that you think there's still a bit of work to be done in terms of actually being able to achieve it? And is there anything that the people that are listening in today can do to kind of help or support that?
I suppose that I kind of said our priority at the moment is really kind of the grant level, the subsidy level for building houses. I think we've maybe got a wee bit of work to do there. I suppose just kind of on the time element of as well, is probably quite some detailed research that needs to go on, and we've not got a lot of time at the moment. So I don't know what that's going to look like, whether we'll have a transitionary period between the current programme and the next programme, but it's just really fundamental. And I know obviously there's so many challenges that the government are facing just now in terms of the money that's available to them, and the different calls that they're getting to invest in it. But if the grant level doesn't allow us to deliver the amount of homes, that if we don't have that, then we're not going to be able to kind of provide. I think as we've kind of seen in the last year, there's so much with people moving into temporary accommodation, and people don't need to be, sleeping on the streets or be homeless. We can provide enough accommodation. So, I think we just really need to keep that momentum going. But yeah, it's certainly challenging times. I wouldn't like to be Kate Forbes at the moment.
I've got a question here from Alistair MacArthur, who says, while the funding is appreciated, do you know if you'll be getting an indication of targets for housing type? Example, whether it's older people, family housing. Okay.
I don't know when they are going to be setting those targets. At the moment, the priority is really kind of on the subsidy level, but I do agree, we can't, it shouldn't just be this kind of blanket target. If we are going to deliver on things like, the housing for varying needs, those type of things, we have to set individual targets as well. I know that there'll be some targets set through the upcoming the National Planning Framework 4, which has obviously been delayed because of the obvious. So, we're getting those a wee bit later than what we would have. So I'll need to check if they have actually, there's so many things that are delayed at the moment and they've set new dates for. I've kind of lost track of what everything's been rescheduled to, but I know that that is something that's coming soon as well, the NPF4.
Okay, and I have Anne Gibson from NHS. So she's asking, what can other organisations do to support these asks?
So we are going to be doing a lot of public affairs activity in the run up to May. Hopefully we do have the election in May. So there is going to be lots of opportunities for people to get involved and kind of show their support for that. So we'll have different resources and things that people can share. So yeah, watch this space, Anne.
In case anyone has anything else. Here we are. Okay. Wendy Farmer has asked, oh wait, I can't see it because of the speech bubble. Is this a subsidy review group looking at HAG benchmarks per unit rather than just overall investment rates?
Unfortunately, we haven't kicked off the group yet, Wendy, so we don't actually know what the remit or what exactly that we are going to look at. But yes, I imagine that's something that is going to be in the mix. I'm hoping that we have the first date for the group to meet in the next week or so. So we'll definitely keep members up to date with how those conversations progress.
They're coming flying in now, Stacey. Okay, so Joanna D, is there an indication for the contractor availability for delivering to programme, ensuring open competitive market for the work and value for money for those delivering the housing? So I guess, are we looking into, whether we're setting these targets, looking into the availability of the contractors to actually be able to deliver on that programme?
Yeah, I suppose that's a good question. We have worked quite more closely with the construction industry over the last year through people have maybe seen through the formation of the Construction Industry Coronavirus Forum. So we've really been working quite closely with the CICV Forum and all the different members over the last year. And, that is certainly something that they're discussing from the construction industry side of it. They do support what we're asking for. And I suppose, as we kind of mentioned, Jennifer, the amount of jobs that house building does kind of generate. So the scale of investment would obviously give them confidence in recruitment and things like that. But yeah, I know that is a bit of a question, in terms of kind of the skills pipeline and availability of labour. I know that is something that the construction industry are discussing.
Yep. And I definitely think, that sort of, no cliff edges will really help with that, knowing that the funding is coming and what that funding looks like and how it's going to come through is really key to ensure that yourselves and also people like Scotland Excel are able to engage with and procure with the market. If there's a proper future funding pipeline there, that makes being able to almost engage and tie down those contractors to deliver on these programs a lot easier to do.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so I think what we'll do is we'll leave it there. If anyone has any other questions, they can always kind of ask them a wee bit later on. All right, so Stacey, if you can just stop sharing your slides now, and I'm going to share.
I forgot about that. Thank you very much, Jennifer. Thank you, everyone.
So I'll just get my slides up. Hopefully you can all see those.
Yeah, we can see them, Jenny.
Thank you. All right, so I'm just going to take 10, maybe 15 minutes, depending on how much I warble on, to talk about Scotland's Excel's new build framework. Probably just before I start, it's just worth saying that I had to think about really how I should pitch this today. And I know that quite a few people that are listening have probably already heard me speak about the new build framework. And I don't have, I'm not taking up a lot of time here. So what I'm not going to do today is give you a step-by-step instruction on how to use the framework, because I think probably a few of you have already heard that. Instead, I thought it'd be more value to just take a wee bit of time to talk to you about the organisations that have been using our framework and how they've been using it and some of the benefits that they're saying that they're realising. If you are looking for us to do a bit more detailed information, then please do just get in touch with us, and we can do either a quick phone call, or we can do a Teams meeting with you and take some time to talk through what your projects that you have in the pipeline and if and how the Scotland Excel framework might be able to support you. So in terms of Scotland Excel's new build framework, it went live in August 2019, which really feels like a millennium ago now. And the framework is going to run until July 2022, and it most likely, we've got another extension option, which we most likely will take up. And if that's the case, it will run until 2023. We've got 17 contractors who are awarded onto the framework, and it's awarded geographically by the Scottish Local Authority area. So what that means is we've broken Scotland into the 32 parts, and we evaluated the contractors for each local authority area and have awarded those that were most competitive to that particular area. The contract can be accessed by all of our Scotland Excel members. So if you're currently a member, then you don't really need to do anything else, that you can access it. If you are not currently a member, but maybe on the back of this or on the back of a further discussion that we have, you think that actually this is something that you would like to kind of use for some of your projects, then it's a reasonably straightforward process to get you signed up as members. So for example, back in November, about the middle of November, we had a housing association approach us who really needed to get out to the market quickly. And by the end of November, we were able to take their membership to our committee and get it approved. And by the start of December, they're drafting up their tender documents. So, we can move pretty quickly on these things. If you do decide that you want to join us, please do just speak to us about that. So in terms of the actual uptake of the framework, so to date we've got 19 organisations who are committed to using our framework for their new build projects. We've got 13 of those organisations are currently either already, the work's already started, they're live, or the tender is out there looking for bids. Of those 19 organisations, around a third of those are housing associations, and they vary in size from sort of smaller to larger organisations. We've got around 34 projects that are currently sitting in our pipeline, but we fully expect that to grow because we've got some organisations who only have their kind of 2021 plans on there, and they're just waiting to get the approval and timelines for their 2022 plans, and those will come on. And also of those 34 projects, 17 of those are currently either awarded or are actively out to the market right now, being tendered and awarded. And this comes to around 500 to 600 million pounds, of which about 160 of that are those that are already out there. And in total, we've got around 3,000 to 3,500 homes sitting in the sort of pipeline, with around 830 of those currently already out to the market or already awarded. Interestingly, when we were looking at the pipeline through the framework, it's actually not that different from what the pipeline was a year ago. And what I mean by that is that the impact of COVID so far has been that projects are being delayed. There's not that many that have been cancelled to date. And so what we're seeing, and I guess this might be reflective of what you yourself are experiencing, is that most projects seem to be delayed around 9 to 12 months on the back of, as a result of COVID. And that seems to be pretty standard across the board of the nearly 20 organisations that we are engaging with quite regularly with regards to our framework. But overall, particularly given the level of delays that we have been experiencing, we're really pleased with the sort of positive uptake and engagement that we have seen through this framework. So in terms of the sort of framework structure, there's 5 lots on it, and those are primarily split into project size based on their number of units. And every single lot has been utilised by our members, with our projects ranging from I think the smallest one we have currently is 13 units, although I think there's a couple smaller ones that are due to come on, right through to large projects of around 200 units. So we're really pleased that kind of every lot has been used. As I said, the framework was awarded by local authority area, and there are rates that apply to each local authority area to each of those units in each of those lots, and those are being utilised by our members. The framework has a few options when it comes to actually calling off from it, and all of those options have been used to date by our members. The sort of split, as I've shown there in the slide, is pretty much in line with what we expected, where the vast majority of works are being awarded via mini competition, with a smaller amount being awarded via direct awards. And what we're finding is that, and of course, due to the complexity of these projects, you would expect that most of it to go through the mini competition. The instances where we're seeing people doing direct awards, as an example, we had someone who had done their own sort of tendering process, and for various reasons that never worked out. And so our framework was able to offer them a sort of quick route to market that allowed them to direct award, and therefore try and claw back some of that sort of delayed lost time. As well as maybe some organisations already have a really clear sort of set out of exactly what they want, what they need, and they're able to meet the requirements within the framework to be able to direct award. But we would expect most people to be using the mini competition option within the framework. And within there, we've created a number of options. So there's the 2 sort of standard ones that if you've used frameworks before, you will be familiar with. So if you're running a mini competition under the framework to award, you can take the framework technical score, and then you can completely reevaluate the commercials. The other option is that you can completely reevaluate the technical and completely reevaluate the commercials and come up with your completely new score. We have also created a sort of in-between option for this particular contract that's proven quite popular with our members, where you reevaluate your commercials, and with the technical, you only need to reevaluate those areas that you actually identify as needing to be reevaluated. So at the framework level, we did quite a lot of analysis around community benefits and around fair work practices. And what you might look at and go and say, I don't need to go through the work of, getting new submissions and scoring all of that area. That's just going to take a lot of time. You can carry over those scores, but then decide to perhaps just reevaluate the areas around project management or delivery or quality and health and safety. And that's an option that is, as I say, is proven really quite popular with our members who are using the framework, and it just saves a little bit of time. It makes it slightly less complicated for them. But in terms of the projects that are being used under the framework, so far we've had it been used to build care villages, fully accessible homes, flats, houses, supported living. The framework itself does cover all residential properties. So it could be used for something like student accommodation, pardon me, or for care homes. Those particular options would need to be done via a mini competition, but the scope of the framework quite clearly states that those can be covered underneath it. The picture there that I've added in was from, or is from, one of our first projects to break ground through the framework, and it's in a 71 unit area done by North Ayrshire and McTaggart. So we were really pleased to kind of get that first one under the belt and get going. And we've got quite a number that we're going to see breaking ground in this quarter, so really within the next kind of month or so. So it really feels like everything's starting to pick up. And I imagine that you yourselves will kind of be experiencing that within your kind of your own projects and your own timelines, that even though we're back into lockdown again, the world seems to just kind of be like pushing on and continuing. So this is my second last slide. I did say I was going to try and keep this as short as possible. I've been involved in this project since the start, and I remember some of the really early conversations that we had around it, that any new build project is exceptionally complex. And in terms of what we wanted Scotland Excel to be able to do is, we wanted as far as possible to be able to provide a simple and compliant procurement route that would make at least one element of this a little bit easier for our members when they're trying to get these projects off the ground. And that's really kind of been key to a lot of the decisions that have been made about how we've structured the framework and the level of guidance and support that we're trying to offer to our members. So if you are using our framework, you're doing so in the knowledge that it's fully compliant with the EU regulations. So that really kind of saves you a lot of time and effort to make sure that you're ticking all the boxes. We'll provide you with some real kind of detailed guidance about how you can conduct the call-offs in line with the procurement regulations. And so as long as you follow that guidance, you know that you are in line with the regulations. I've just realised you can tell I'm not quite accepted that Brexit is real because I've written the EU regulations, but we're just with the Scottish procurement regulations. The other thing that we're being really proactive around is about the pre-qualification of suppliers. So, they all have to meet certain minimum requirements, certificates, insurances, financial requirements. And we make sure that those are kept absolutely up to date every month. If anyone's due to expire, we're in touch with them to make sure that we're getting that information back from them. And we hold all those documents on file. So if you are using our framework, that's something that we are able to provide to you as opposed to another piece of work that you have to go out to the contractors to get that information. We also have a lot of upfront rates that can help you when calling off from the framework. So either you can use them for the direct award, but as I say, 80% of projects are not going to be done through direct award, but it gives a really good indication of benchmarking or helping you when it comes to actually trying to budget for some of these projects before you go out to the market. Our rates allow you to kind of get an indication as to where the numbers are going to fall. And all of this is supported by a number of tools and templates that sit on our website that's fully accessible by all of our members that make it a lot easier to administer. We've got a cost analysis tool that you can log on, and you will see all the contractors with all the sort of options for the local authority areas that you are working in. So if you work across a number of local authority areas, those will all come up when you log in, and you can say, okay, I'm looking to build in Angus, and you can select down into that area. And from there, you're able to kind of build your house that will then show you what the rate would be that you can then use for your kind of benchmarking purposes. And once you become a member, you get full access to that tool, and you can go in and out of it as you see fit. And just going back to what I said around, it was really important to us that the framework was simple and in some ways helped people with what is often quite a complicated procurement process. And so we're really pleased that one of the housing associations, Lower Burn, that we've been working with, their chief exec just recently said that our Scotland Excel framework has a range of suppliers from across the country who've gone through the procurement process, registered a business. And this is really key for housing associations looking to form contracts, because you can be assured that all the necessary compliance details have been worked through, and it means programmes can get underway and progress efficiently. And so we were really pleased to kind of get that feedback from Lower Burn. So just to finish off, please do, I've put some contact details there, please do use them, even if it's later on down the road and there's something you kind of just want to ask about. Feel free to drop us a message, whether it's to our dedicated housing team or to the construction team at Scotland Excel. I very much just focused on our new build framework, but at Scotland Excel we do have a wide range of ways in which we can help and support you. I was catching up with Colin just before this, and we were talking about the range of frameworks that we have, which is over 70 within Scotland Excel. So there's a massive number there. In terms of, and what he was telling me was that in terms of the uptake, anyone that when a housing association becomes a member of Scotland Excel, they tend to use around 4 to 6 of our frameworks, and on those 4 to 6 alone, it works out on average that around for every £1 is spent on our membership, you make around £15 of savings. And I work quite closely with the team that do our energy efficiency framework, and some of the results that we've had on the back of that, where associations have made savings of hundreds of thousands, like £300,000, just by doing their energy efficiency projects through our framework. So we'd really encourage you to come and speak to us around that. We've also done quite a lot of work around community wealth. We've got our Academy for Learning and Development, and we also have our projects and consultancy area that's proving quite popular right now. One of the benefits of that is that there's some of the options are around like hosted procurement, where maybe what you just need is almost like a bum in a seat to do some of the procurement work that you need done this year. And through working with Scotland Excel, we're sometimes able to provide that kind of support and that person who has the knowledge and understanding to kind of just get those tenders out. And so, as I say, there's a huge number of ways that we would love to be able to kind of support yourselves in kind of getting the most out of this economic and social recovery that we're about to probably just start getting into. So that's about it for me. I think what I'll just do now is I'll stop sharing my screen, and if anyone has any questions, I'm free to take those.
Jenny, you have a question in the message facility from David Lappin. So how comprehensive is the geographical coverage for new build contractors?
So on average, we've got for each area, on average, we've got about 5 to 6, I think it is, or maybe it's 5 to 7 contractors within each area. There are a couple, sort of some more remote areas, so a couple of the islands where it's less, just because that was just the nature of the number of bids that we got. But on average, we're looking around 5 to 7 per local authority area. And so far, the feedback has been that in terms of people that have been put out their tenders, they're getting sufficient a number of responses that is allowing them to then go on and actually award to people. Anything else?
We have a couple more. Kieran Sexton, so he's saying, did you say the next opportunity for new contractors is July 2022?
So it's most likely this framework will run until July 2023. So that's the most likely scenario. It currently is due to run to 2022, but I think we will end up extending it to 2023. what that means is probably around the end of 2022 is when we will release the tender for the renewal, and that will be done on Public Contracts Scotland. So I suspect towards the end of next year, that's when we'll be opening up the tender to renew that framework to new contractors. What I would say is that the framework, does include a requirement on the existing contractors, if they are looking for any new subcontractors, that they should advertise that on Public Contracts Scotland. So you can currently go on and if you've not already done it, and you're a contractor, you absolutely should, whether it's to do with this framework or not. Register yourself in Public Contracts Scotland, and a few of our contractors that are doing work through our framework have actually advertised some of their subcontracting opportunities on Public Contracts Scotland, and the benefit of that is then it's kind of open, it's in a central point, and anyone can see it, and anyone knows that that opportunity is there and can get in touch with the contractor to see if that's something they can take advantage of.
Okay, and lastly, we've got Alistair MacArthur, who's asking what is the cost of accessing the construction consultancy framework?
So in order to access any Scotland Excel framework, you need to be a member of Scotland Excel. If you are a housing association, that is based on the number of houses that you have. So if you get in touch with our housing team, so that's the housing at scotland-excel.org.uk, we'll put the contact details back up. They'll be able to tell you exactly what it is for you, but it's a simple maths pretty much of your housing stock multiplied by a certain rate, and I can't remember exactly what that is right now.
And lastly, Anne at NHS, does the framework also include information on things like community consultation, place standard tools?
Yeah, so the framework has certain requirements within the framework specification around those elements, and so the framework specification is kind of like a base specification, so it has certain minimum requirements around those areas, and then if you are going out to mini-comp, you can obviously increase, or sometimes it just requires you to put a little bit more detail around your specific project behind some of that information.
Thanks, Jenny. I think that's you for now.
Right. Well, if anyone's got anything else later, we can always pick those up. Okay. So to finish up, we're going to have Sarah Buchanan come up and speak from Construction Scotland Innovation Centre. So Sarah, if you can turn on your camera and turn on your
Hello.
mic. And what I'll do is I'll share my slides again, and you can get going.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm Sarah Buchanan, and I'm the Innovation Manager at Construction Scotland Innovation Centre. I'm here today to share some of the positives that have been happening over the last 10 months for the construction industry, and to give you a few case studies of how we've supported housing associations in terms of low carbon and off-site housing. Next slide, please. So the Innovation Centre is one of 7 that have been set up through the Scottish Government, SFC, SE and HI. And our prime aim is to create jobs, new products and services and business models for the construction industry and the technology partners by accessing the research that's getting done in Scottish universities. So we currently work with 14 universities, and we really play the role of connecting the research that's going on in Scotland with the industry and public sector partners so that we can bring economic value to Scotland. Next slide, please. So we work around 4 different areas, digital transformation being absolutely key, as we've all seen through the last 10 months. And for construction, the digital revolution, if you like, is absolutely huge. The amount of technology that is being utilised. We've got drones, we have building information modelling, 3D modelling. virtual reality, artificial intelligence, and there's a huge amount of research that's getting done in all of these areas, and we are working directly with the industry to implement, to really modernise construction. And in terms of advanced manufacturing, this is the whole movement towards industrialised manufactured construction in factory-based settings. Obviously, off-site housing plays a part within that. We've got the whole movement towards using robotics within the industry, exoskeletons, wearable technology, and of course within building sustainably is the whole movement towards energy efficiency, reducing our carbon emissions, working around circular economy, the decarbonisation of heat, and culture changes looking at the skills piece, gender diversity, how can we attract young people into the industry. Next slide, please. So as I've mentioned, we've got our connected ecosystem where we join the dots of our public sector partners, our academic partners, and industry. I myself have been involved in the collaborative projects element. So I've worked with West of Scotland Housing on a passive house build in our factory in Blantyre. I've worked with Lowerburn Housing looking at air source heat pumps and ground source heat pumps to provide not only guidance for the housing associations if you're thinking about making those types of decisions, but also a tenants guide as well. We've worked on the Ganachie Healthy House project, and I'll speak about the project that we're working on with Eildon at the moment, looking at off-site construction. We've got a fantastic factory at Blantyre, which I love showing people around, and unfortunately we have gone virtual for that part at the moment. But I encourage everyone to book on the tour. I'll speak a bit more about that later as well. And of course our Future Skills programme. Next slide, please. So yeah, what have we been doing for housing association members? We have a strategic partnership with the SFHA. We've provided funding into projects for the academic element. We were part of the Homes of the Future project, looking at modern methods of construction. I showed a robot at the innovation conference a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago. We've done a lot of work around BIM and of course the movement towards off-site housing, but essentially we're here to help with technical queries. We've done a lot of passive house training, and we are interested in innovative ideas. There's a lot of work getting done around data-driven innovation in terms of the smart appliances that you can put into houses. And there's a lot of resource that we can share with you if that's something you're interested in. Next slide, please. So just to give you an idea of what we've been doing in terms of helping the industry recover over the last 10 months. In March last year, between March and April, the ILG is the kind of main contractor's voice for industry. They work with UK government and look at kind of policy direction and training, procurement, and the Scottish Government and the ILG, next slide please, worked to form the Scottish Construction Leadership Forum last April. And this was really about how do we get the industry back at work? What does a COVID restriction site look like? What are the implications for the labour on site? And I'm glad to say, next slide please, this is one of the most brilliant examples we've had, the most positive examples we've had of collaboration within the industry. It was all hands on deck. We worked to create an online portal where there have been numerous examples of larger contractors helping to share guidance who had worked already on their strategy for getting back on site. We worked to find out where the critical infrastructure projects were, who needed to be back on site. And obviously by June, July, when construction went back, this portal, played a role, and that's getting updated consistently, so people can access that, the industry can access that if they're looking to get back on site. Next slide, please. I'd also just like to mention the recovery phase of what we did. We're working currently on 5 priority areas in terms of how we help the industry to recover, and there is an online website that you can access. Next slide, please. If you're interested in any of the information about how we're going to take the industry forward. And I believe Stacey had mentioned the CICV. Next slide, please. So this is the Construction Industry Coronavirus Forum, and I'm glad to see that the trade associations moved a lot quicker and also formed their own group to help with guidance, recovery, things with like how are the guys going to work in emergency repairs, how are they going to work on site, what does the maintenance section of the market look like. So these two groups have really been the kind of the pivoted, if you like, to help the industry get back on site and are looking to help with the recovery. Next slide, please. We ourselves launched a programme last April, looking at how we utilise the digital transformation element of our work to get people back on site. So this were projects where we put 250 grand's worth of funding. We've supported 6 projects, and it's using digital technology to work and help the industry recover. So next slide, please. The first project that we supported was the Be COVID Smart app. And this is looking at how you can train your staff to work under COVID restrictions without having to have people in site inductions in the same room. And all of the projects that we support are open source. So you can access this information, you can use it to train your staff on site before they get on site, anyone new that's coming in, and also for your current staff. Next slide, please. We've also supported a remote building inspection app, and this is to look at how can work be inspected without people actually having to be on site. So it's using handheld devices that will take scans of the work, for example, Clerk of Works, for site managers to look at snagging. There could also be a potential for crossover with housing associations who will be able to utilise this for checking on houses, to go and check on tenants. And the research will be published in the next, I think it's due to be published in the next 2 months. So I'll share that information with you as well. Next slide, please. To give you an idea of the current policy landscape for construction over the last 6 years or so, it's very similar to the housing association sector. There's a lot of policy changes, a lot of direction of travel, and really construction has systemic issues with the labour shortage. We have problems with quality, designed as versus performance as built. And we also have the sustainability, the same sustainability targets that you guys have. We have to reduce our carbon emissions. We have to look at reducing the waste that we produce in construction. And really over the last 6 years, pre-2020, there has been a direction of travel towards a presumption of off-site. So the UK government departments, Ministry of Transport, Department of Justice, Department of Education, have really been looking at a direction of travel towards off-site, and this is now being seen that it's a direction of travel for the housing market as well. Next slide, please. So our targets over the last 5 years have been to look at reducing our costs, reducing delivery times, and reducing emissions. And off-site is a way to answer all of those challenges. We're working in a controlled environment. We're working where it's a much more efficient way of working, less waste, and the quality of the build. Next slide, please. We have supported, of course, as well, sorry, I forgot to mention, we've got the eyes of the world on us in terms of COP. We've got the climate emergency that's been announced in Scotland. And this whole green revolution towards low carbon technologies, renewable technologies, has come together with the off-site kind of industrialised manufacturing construction. And this is why we are looking at the off-site within construction. Next slide, please. So we've supported the AIM-CH project with Stuart Milne and Barrett. And this is looking to prove the case for industrialised housing at the same cost as traditionally built housing. This is a project that's been going for 3 years and is about to be published, the findings, to look at cost base, to look at the difference in cost considerations for factory built homes, and to look at the capacity in Scotland. If we're going to hit this target, potentially we need more factories. What does that look like? What kind of investment does the Scottish Government need to look like to make that happen? And again, this will be shared with the public once it's published. There's also a website that you can go on and have a look at for updates. Next slide, please. We're obviously looking at the affordable housing model as well. And in 2019, we supported Edinburgh Napier, the Glasgow School of Art as the research partners, along with SFHA, COSLA, Homes for Scotland, and a number of the offsite contractors to look at what is the current policy landscape around offsite. Does there need to be a policy for affordable housing in Scotland? What is the current market capacity? And can we have a co-design process involving the housing sector market, which looks at a live site? And I'm glad to say that that is happening. We have a site in Granton, which is going to go ahead. My colleague Andrew is looking after that for CSIC. And if you're looking for more information, I can certainly get that for you. Next slide, please. So this is my most exciting project that I like to talk about. This came out of the funding call with Modern Methods of Construction that we did in November 2019. We had some amazing responses. I think 8 housing associations submitted their ideas around modern methods of construction, including someone who wanted to look at concrete. Can we print a whole concrete house? Not yet is the answer to that. However, Eildon were successful at looking at site in the borders. You can build a net zero carbon house just now, but there are choices to be made around technology, and there's choices to be made around cost, and also tenant behaviour. So there's been a lot of research done that the tenants need to interact with this new technology, and that can affect the success of that technology and also the bills at the end of the day. So this project is looking at 3 different offsite methodologies. It's a SIPS panel model, a passive house, and a new model called Energy Strong, which has come out of a retrofit model from the Netherlands. It's a world first. It's not been done for new builds. And it's looking at the cost, whole life cycle cost, and the tenant behaviour to compare these on a cost by metre. What is the effect that it has on the fuel bills? The tenants will be involved from the start on the project, and we're going to monitor it for 24 months. So this should be a case study that provides cost-based evidence about the decisions that are having to be made around offsite. It's a fantastic project to be involved in, and obviously it's been delayed. However, we're looking to get 2 of the sites kicked off in March, and I'll certainly keep everyone that's interested updated. Next slide, please. I wanted to mention this case study. It's something we did a couple of years ago. We've done a lot of work on passive house at the centre. We have supported training for housing associations around the theory and practical build time in the factory. And this was a project looking at the Scottish supply chain for passive house. At the moment, you have to use passive house certified products. And we were trying to prove the case that actually the Scottish supply chain can build passive house as well. Passive house is a fabric first air tightness, looking at reduced energy demand and renewable technology. There is a lot in terms of the quality of the build and training of contractors to be able to provide the different processes involved in the build, the physical build. And there's a lot of extra time that needs to be spent making sure that everybody understands the differences in air tightness. There is a lot of design guides considerations that come out of this project. It's a fantastic resource for anyone who's considering passive house. Although it was a private builder, the learning is there if you're interested in passive house. I've got a lot of resource, and I've obviously worked with West of Scotland doing a passive house build in the yard in Blantyre. So get in touch. There is a lot of examples already of passive house in Scotland, and it's certainly something that's going to tick the low carbon net zero boxes. Next slide, please. I wanted to mention the technology strategy report. It's commissioned by Wheatley, and it's a really good summary of the considerations for building methodologies and tech that's happening for housing associations. Again, I can send this out to everybody who's interested. It looks at community energy, smart grids, MMC, modern methods of construction, so offsites in there. And it also looks at data-driven innovation, things like the Internet of Things, smart appliances, which I think on the tenant side, for looking at kind of tenant care, is a really big area for housing associations to consider. And it's just a good summary. It's just a general good summary. It doesn't take too long to read. It's a really great resource. So get in touch if you're interested in hearing about that. Next slide, please. Yeah, I just wanted to mention our, of course I did, CLT project. We have the only CLT press in Britain in the factory. It's a sustainable material, and I just wanted to put it in there to get housing associations to think about, it's not just the build methodologies, it's the materials that you can use as well, in terms of your specifications. It's low carbon, it's sustainable, and it's currently getting monitored. That was with Sanctuary and CCG. Again, another prime example of the innovation that's going on in construction just now in Scotland. And we're trying to prove the case for homegrown CLT. The wood for this particular project was brought in from the Netherlands. Scotland's got a lot of wood, so we're trying to prove the case for homegrown CLT and obviously bring the cost down as well. Next slide, please. Yes, the factory, my beloved factory, which I love showing people around. I've had a number of housing associations out to check out the technology, to look, to feel, to get inspired by what's going on in the market right now. And it's all gone online. So there is a virtual tour. And when we get back to different times, I will more than happy take people around and get you involved to physically see the robot, the offsite line, all the exciting stuff we're doing in terms of the installation market, digital prototyping. We built the first CLT house in Scotland within the factory. You can go online and have a look at the case study for that as well. It's a fantastic resource. It's the only one of its kind in the UK, and Scotland, as always, leading the line. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So BIM, building information modelling. Very, very simply, it creates an intelligent 3D model of the project you're working on. It's a collaborative way of working digitally so that you store documents, drawings, all the information about the project in one place, and everyone stores it in the same place and calls it the same thing. And there are protocols, naming conventions for the system to work. It's not about buying a BIM model or BIM infrastructure. It's a collaborative way of working digitally, is a very simple way of explaining it. We've got a great animation online that explains it very simply in 7 minutes. There are resources online. It's baby steps with BIM. Go on and have a look, or if you have an understanding of BIM and you want your staff to find out more about it, it's just a really easy, free way of finding out more. And again, once we get back to having events at CSIC, we'll do a bit more on BIM as well. Next slide, please. The Highlands and Islands housing associations have a different approach, obviously a more complex, some could argue, in terms of house building, in terms of land reclamation, in terms of logistics, price, planning. So we have created an advanced manufacturing hub to look at specific case examples for the Highlands and Islands. What are people doing in terms of offsite, in terms of manufacturing? There's been a much more panelised approach, I would say, in the rural areas. Who are the contractors that are working in that area, and what are the things that you need to think about if you're considering offsite in Highlands and Islands. Just another really great resource. And I think it might be my final slide after this. Yeah. So I haven't touched on retrofit in any great detail today. We are waiting for a number of policies to be published, the Housing to 2040 and the Heat Standard. We are looking at retrofit. We totally understand that is one of the things that we have to look at in terms of emissions, and we will be implementing a programme of works around that. I'll keep people posted. But for now, thanks very much for listening. And here is a fantastic video around one of the sustainable materials that we're working with. Thank you. Hopefully it works. You should just be able to press play. It is online. If it's not going to work, it is online. You can go and have a look at it on our website.
We could even send out the link, Sarah, at some point for it.
No worries.
You're on mute, Jenny.
I think you might be on mute, Jenny.
Sorry, I'm not doing very well with technology right now. So I couldn't get the link to work, so we'll send that out. And I'll also just apologise. I didn't realise my camera was on. So I had a dead leg and I was trying to march it off earlier. So apologies if I distracted anyone from there while Sarah was speaking. That was not my intention. So thank you very much for that. That was really interesting. Do you know, every time I hear anyone from CSIC speak, I always just end up being amazed by exactly how much you have going on at this one time and how much as an organisation you juggle. So I've no doubt that there was a whole bunch of stuff in there that will have perked interest from everyone that's attending. So I'll Sarah, do you want to Sarah Claire manage the questions if there's any for us?
Yeah. Oh yeah, so Colin's just asking, is just in Sarah, lots of great work going on, and you highlighted a lot of published resources at case studies. Are these all available on your website?
Yes, hi Colin. I think I actually know Colin. Yes, they are. I can also send out any specifics, particularly on the Passive House. That's just a resource that I was working on. So if anyone has questions on specifics, then I can send out the Passive House. But any of the videos and the case studies are all online, all on our website. And if anyone has any further questions or they want more detail, I can certainly help. Yeah. I think Yvonne had a question about...
Yes, I have. Sorry, I just noticed that there. So Yvonne is asking, what innovations or progress have you seen in creating the circular economy?
Well, that's what my video was about.
Oh.
So it was the K-brick, and this is a sustainable recycled brick, 90% world's first recycled brick, and it's from recycling waste from Hamilton Masonry, and they've created a brick from that material. So that's just one example of the fantastic work that we've been doing around sustainable materials. My colleague Jennifer Smart is involved in the circular economy. We do a lot of work with Zero Waste Scotland. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on about design for deconstruction. And Jennifer Smart is your best contact. She's got all the info on the circular economy stuff that we're working on.
Fab, thank you. Does anyone else get any other questions for Sarah? If you want to raise your hand or type it in the message facility. Sorry, Jenny, we missed one at the end of yours. If you're okay to just answer that one. So it's from Jai Adamson. So, and it's if there are any issues with the contractors already on the framework, how do you respond to those?
So we've got a dedicated team that kind of support our framework. So without going into too much detail, the framework does allow for various kind of, I guess, escalation procedures if we feel that it gets to that. But Sarah Claire is our kind of key contract manager for the new build framework. And she's in constant contact not only with our members who are using the framework, but also with the contractors. She's just finished sort of a round of contract management meetings with them. So we really try and be as proactive, you know, and try and get sight of should there be any issues that might be arising we try and get as early sight as possible on those and work alongside the contractor and our member around what some of those issues are. And as I say, the framework itself within the contract does have a number of escalation procedures that if we feel that we need to use, then we can be proactive in terms of managing and dealing with that. Okay, so I think that's...
Oh, thanks, Graham.
Oh yeah, Graham's just shared a link to the video, so thanks for that. So I think that's us for today. If no one's got any further questions, we will be back in touch with you just to get some feedback against on how today's gone, and we will assume that it's okay with Sarah and Stacey. We'll also look to share the slide pack with you. Please do, as mentioned, follow us on Twitter or LinkedIn, or provide us with any other feedback. Sarah says it's fine to share slides, so that's great. And we'll be kind of reaching out to all of you to get any more input. And the other thing that would be really helpful is if you can think if there's any other areas that Scotland Excel could do webinars, any other topics, or perhaps people that you'd like to hear more from, or get together to do maybe some kind of panel discussion or whatever, please do give us those suggestions, and we'll definitely see if we can make something happen. Okay. All right, so thank you very much, Sarah and Stacey. That was just very interesting, particularly that's from my personal point of view. I found that really, really useful. So thank you very much, everyone. And you're getting away a little bit early, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.